Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Orange Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with you here on a Tuesday, recording this about 4:30. And I am joined today by Lance Riesland, bringing Lance back on the pod. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Dan. Good to be back, my friend. Good to be back.
Okay, you're going to be on a couple times this week as we head towards the combine. You're going to be back on Thursday. We're going to dig into the draft a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of a combine preview for everybody, get some names out there for people to know, kind of get a feel for where your board is at as we head to Indianapolis. But today we're going to really focus on the Cleveland Browns, kind of where they are. And of course, they just made a big hire. Mike Rutenberg is the new defensive coordinator. A lot of the talk around this hire has been, how true will they stay to that Jim Schwartz system? How will the players that they've drafted and signed to play that system fit with what Mike Rutenberg does? As you've kind of studied him, what have you picked up? How does he fit with what the Browns have?
Well, I've been trying to figure this out. I think I got a little bit to explain. It's hard to sometimes explain the difference between like schemes and stuff. So the scheme is always going to tweak. So if you and I run the same scheme, you're going to call it different than me. Dan Labbe's defense is going to be different than Lance Riesland's defense, even if we have the same scheme. So I like to think of it as he's very Jim Schwartz philosophy based. It's an aggressive front. They'll be in a forefront. Their linebackers will play downhill. There'll be a one high hat safety. There'll be 8 in the box. But some of the differences will be there'll be some odd fronts. There will be some times where Miles will be a little bit of everywhere. That'll be good. There will be times, if you think about a Robert Saleh, that's where this guy comes from. There's going to be, even though Robert Saleh is a one high hat guy, he's a guy who likes to disguise pre-snap to post-snap. You and I talked about that during the season when the Browns played the 49ers. So you're going to get, even though it's going to end up as a one high hat, lots of disguise. There's going to be different levels of blitzing. They will bring some secondary guys. They will bring some linebackers, but the philosophy stays the same. One gap penetration, linebackers downhill, lots of man coverage, but there will be some more tweaks in the secondary. This, obviously being the pass game guy in Atlanta, there's going to be some different stuff. But when you watch the film, and I'm about probably a couple hours into the film, it's very, very simple. They're giving the quarterback lots of eye candy, like the offenses like to do to defenses. He likes to do that secondary wise to the quarterbacks. The idea of, we're going to show you this, but we're going to end up in this. And even though you might know it's man, where is the pressure coming from? And do you have your hots built in? So the scheme is very, very is similar, but the philosophy is the same. And the philosophy is, we're going to dictate what happens, not you on offense. So that's my thing. So it doesn't mean, I tell everybody when they say stay true, you don't stay true. The scheme is similar. The philosophy is the same, but what you do on red zone, what you do on third medium, what you do on second medium, what you do, all those situational things, that situational awareness, every coach is different. So the pressure, the dictating, all that will stay the same, but the what you're going to get a little bit different schematically, but not a ton.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you made the decision to fire Kevin, you inadvertently, maybe not inadvertently isn't the right word, but you've also made the decision that there's going to be some things that are different, right? You were going to lose guys. Things are going to change when you bring in a new coach. And then when you made the decision to not hire Jim Schwartz, you obviously took on the risk of, well, maybe we need to go find a new defensive coordinator, and that's okay. Like, that's not a good thing or a bad thing, honestly. But the fact that at least they have a guy who kind of fits that scheme still and can kind of do a lot of the same things, and you're not looking at an entire, a season of having to change the personnel to fit what Mike Rutenberg has to do. That's really what matters, I think, in all of this. He'll call it different, and like you said, he'll do some different things here and there, but the fact that it works with the personnel they have is really the most important thing.
Yeah, so if you think about, Myles Garrett, Schlesinger, and Denzel Ward, we'll use those three examples. They're going to be good in any scheme. But what you get, this aggressive scheme allows guys like Tyson Campbell to stay in man. It allows Devin Bush to play downhill. It allows Malik Collins to be a gap penetrating animal in there. It allows Mason Graham to play both the run and the pass as a guy who can move in gaps. It allows Alex Wright and Myles Garrett and these guys, Isaiah, to get to the edge still, because they'll still be in some wide 5s, wide 9s. So a lot of similarities. I say Dan, if you ask me what the biggest difference will be, it's just kind of the look of the secondary on how it's going to look on some downs. But Jim Schwartz did some different things this year in the secondary too. It wasn't always man all the time like it was 2 years ago when they struggled a little bit. So they're used to some different coverages. These are pros, but you're still going to get a lot of man coverage. You're still going to get a lot of one high hat.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there that's important. It's the role players. It's
Hmm.
like you said, Miles Garrett is going to be Miles Garrett. Like, guess what, guys? It doesn't matter who your DC is. Miles Garrett's going to have an awesome year next year.
Yep.
Denzel Ward is still going to run routes for the receiver. Like that, Carson Swessinger, I think, has reached that level already where it's like we're good with whatever system he's in. Carson's going to be pretty good. So like you don't have to worry about those guys. But to your point, it's the if Devin Bush is back or if they draft a linebacker to play, whatever they do there at that position, it's about fitting that. It's about Grant Delpit. Like it feels like they've finally embraced who Grant Delpit is last year. And we saw him have a pretty good season. Like, so you're not going to suddenly put Grant Delpit back playing deep 90% of the time. He's still going to be able to be at the line of scrimmage and causing havoc. That's really the key is all of these role players being able to do what they do best because the stars are going to be the stars regardless.
Well, yeah, and they've invested a lot in that defense. They've invested money, and you take a guy like Tyson Campbell. Where there's a huge difference when Tyson Campbell is in man coverage as compared to zone. In zone, he's a solid NFL corner, maybe a little bit below average. In man, he's possibly all pro. And that's a big difference in terms of schematics when people say, why do you have to, every scheme can work. But the thing that you like about this Todd Monken style of being a head coach, obviously, once again, we'll start off the new year with the same old things I always say. This is going to be a players over plays scheme. And what that you get there is that, they're not going to make Devin Bush two gap read and slow read to A, fast read to B, all those kind of different things linebackers can do in different fronts. Devin Bush is when he see ball, get downhill. You see the double team come make some tackles in space, and that's what really helps. Same with Delpit, right? So Delpit can play deep once in a while, but you want him to live in it. And so, if you once in a while you might put him on the half, and everybody thinks he's going to roll down, but maybe he stays deep once in a while, and you bring the corners to the other side. There's some things you can do, but you play to their strengths, and you don't worry about. That's why I like Jim Schwartz. That's why I like Todd Monken on offense. That it's the idea of I don't care what these guys do poorly. Let's do what they do really well, and that's going to really help. And this is an energetic guy. The more I watch him, the more I read on him. This is going to be this. I think this guy's going to be a good fit.
Do you think there was some intentionality there to looking at so many pass game coordinators? And obviously they end up hiring a guy who was a pass game coordinator.
I do because the thing is that Todd Monken being the head coach having influence. Todd Monken, as you and I know, has had pretty good success against Jim Schwartz. I'm not talking always winning or putting up big yards, but the idea of we're gonna let the defensive line run upfield and trap them. We're gonna force coverage by your linebackers and safeties. We're gonna stay away from the corners, and we're gonna work man coverage, and we're gonna work man beaters all the time. Jim Schwartz, to his credit, says, "Go ahead and try to beat me." And I think what they want to get to a little bit more, Dan, is they want to get to a little bit more of we still want to be in that, but we want to make that quarterback have to think. And here's the easiest way to think about it. If a quarterback knows where he's going with the football, his footwork is going to be right. He's going to deliver it on time with anticipation because pre-snap, he got the look he wanted. And with the Browns, if all teams would do is run a little bit of motion. And when you ran that motion, if you saw a man, all of a sudden what man coverage does for a quarterback is it tells you that your footwork is going to be outstanding because it doesn't mean you're going to complete the pass, but NFL quarterbacks who know where they're going for the ball, that's why getting to the second and third progression is one of the things I grade hardest when I'm looking at college quarterbacks because it's hard to get to the second and third progression. And so, yeah, I think they're just trying to, disguise that a little bit more. And being a Robert Saleh guy, disciple, they'll do that pretty well.
So look, obviously this guy's been around for a while. Broke into the league in 2003. Has worked for a bunch of different guys. You mentioned the Saleh connections, obviously. Most recently, when he came back to the NFL, that's really what you kind of look at. This move, though, this jump now to being a defensive coordinator for the first time, calling the defense for the first time. What's the biggest challenge he faces, do you think, in kind of making that jump?
Well, it's the situations, right? The situational things that win football games, right? So, like I said with Jim Schwartz, it's the what are we doing on third and medium, which I think is the most important down in all levels of football. Third and 4 to 7. What are you doing on those downs? How are you isolating your best players? What coverage are you playing? What are you doing in the red zone? What are you doing on the goal line? What are you doing coming out? What are you doing? What is your routine before practice? It's the idea of everything that goes on you're now in charge of. So to a certain extent, you become that. Obviously, you're not Todd Monken, but you're the head coach of the defense. And with Todd calling plays, you're going to be like Jim Schwartz. You're going to be the guy. You're going to be the guy in charge. Because I was a play caller, and when you're the play caller and the head coach, you can't do it all. So you got to rely on that defensive guy. So what you're going to get, the biggest difference is these guys all have been doing this so long. They understand what they want to do. It's just the live bullets, like we say, like in preseason with the players. When live bullets start flying around and you got to make calls in 20 seconds and you got to figure out what the down and distance is and how much are you relying on numbers and how much you're relying on feel and just being, you're the guy now. Everything rolls onto you. Everything that goes wrong on defense, whether it's your fault or not, it's your fault. And that's a difference, right? Because when you're this is a pass game, right, you get run on, it's not your fault. You're not worried about what the offense does. You're not worried. Now it's just the idea of you're the guy. And as my dad always said, it's lonely on top. So that's part of the deal. And it'll just be that transition. He'll do fine. The calls, it's just live action now. Now you're in charge.
Yeah, and I think I think you tweeted something about this. It was either today or yesterday, but I saw it today. Just this idea of like we don't know if Mike Rutenberg's going to be good at this or not. And like
Mhm.
that's okay. I know it doesn't make for maybe it doesn't make for great podcasting, maybe it doesn't make for great social clips, all that stuff. But like we just don't know. Like you just have to go through. Todd Monken went through this process, decided that this was the guy he wanted to hire. And there is some risk involved because he's never called it before. He's never been a defensive coordinator. So maybe it like just doesn't go very well. But I don't think having done it before had to be a prerequisite for this hire. You have to hire the guy you believe in the most. And a year from now, you're either going to be right or wrong, and there's certainly going to be consequences if you're wrong one way or another. But like, I don't know. I can't sit here and like pound the table and say, "Man, he's going to be awesome," or "Man, what a stupid hire by Todd Monken." I don't know how anybody can realistically sit here and say either one with any sort of confidence right now.
Well, I did tweet that out today, and the reason why is because I got a lot of pushback on. First they hire Monk, and then they hire this guy. These are the worst hires in the league, and I just never, there's a couple things. Once again, a lot of things I say people don't agree with, and I understand that, and I respect everybody's opinion, especially people who work at it hard and are doing the best they can, like I always try to do. And the thing that bothers me is that it's like there's no context ever, right? So it's like last year when multiple people are saying, they're charting the throws at practice with quarterbacks. That just didn't make a lot of sense to me because there's no context. It's the same thing with a head coach. How can you say Todd Monk and his staff are the worst in this hiring cycle? How do you say that? It makes no sense to me. Now, if you and I had a lot of people say, well, I'm gonna stamp this, and when they stink, I'm gonna do the I told you so. Well, that's kind of how football is, and if they do stink, they will be gone. And I will say they're not very good too after they're not very good. Or, so it's one of those things you've heard me say all the time. I'm not losing a game or I'm not judging somebody before the ball is snapped. That's not never how I work. And the idea of a guy, no one else looked at Todd Monken. So what? That means nothing to me. This is a guy who's 60 years old, who's been around football his whole life. He's got some knowledge because no other team wanted him. That doesn't mean anything to me. Now, if he's not good, okay, but what if he's really good? And then it's like one of those things. I don't know. I like to see it play out. And I think football success starts with the idea of we can make this work, put the work in, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and I think that's I don't want to get too caught up in playing the results and like a year from now being like, man, that Todd Monken hire sure was a bad decision. And then, if I saw things that maybe I didn't like about it, like, okay, I'll say them right now. I mean, I think it is significant that he's 60 years old and he hasn't been a head coach before, and the Browns were the only team looking at him. But I also think he's got a pretty good resume, and there's a chance it could work. I see the scenario where it works, but like just the idea of specifically, well, this guy's never been a coordinator before. How can you hire him? I mean, Joe Woods was a coordinator before he got here, and Browns fans couldn't wait to run him out of town. So, like, there are plenty of guys who have been coordinators before, and that's not the prerequisite to me. I think what I'm interested most in him is the people he's worked with, spending time with Robert Saleh, spending time with the Jets there as well. Spending that last season with Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta. I mean, those are guys you want to learn from and pick the game up from. Now, I don't know why Robert Saleh didn't want to hire him in Tennessee. I don't know why he didn't follow Robert Saleh to San Francisco this year. I don't know all of that. But uh, I think while the resume is not super like, okay, this guy's coordinated great defenses and he's been calling defenses for 10 years. I see a process here where Todd Monken hired a guy that he thinks is young and can be really good. So I'll give it a chance.
Well, if you think about just now, in the last 5 minutes, all the good things I said about Monken and all the concerns you had about Monken or Rutenberg and all these guys, like your thoughts and my thoughts mean actually nothing until they start
Right.
playing, until they
Right.
start. So my thought, that's kind of like, you think he's going to be great. No, I don't know he's going to be great either. I just know that he has to be given a shot and let's see what he can do, because that's how football works. And that's what I love about football, is that no matter what people say, it's what the product you put on the field. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Do with Monken. Did I think they would hire Schwartz? Yes. Did I want them to hire Schwartz? Absolutely. That being said, I'm glad Monken said what he said when he said we don't block Schwartz, we block Myles Garrett. What do you want Todd Monken to say? Oh my gosh, I can't do this without Jim Schwartz. These are grown men who've done this their whole life. He appreciates what Schwartz does. And they're like you said, there'll be consequence if it doesn't work. But if it's all on you. So if it doesn't work, at least go down with your guys and go down with your scheme and go down with what you do and your beliefs and your values and your practice habits and things like that. That's really what it comes down to. So it's a fresh slate. And like I said, whether I liked it or not, now I'm at the point where let's see what this guy can do. There's some good things. And you know me, Dan, I'm always about, like, I think you can. I'm never losing a game until I play it. And when people ask me how many games the Browns are going to win next year, I hope they win them all. And that's how you have to think, realistic or unrealistic. That's how you have to think as a football coach.
So let's talk a little more about the Schwartz thing, because I think that's interesting. Because I actually, and again, this is part of why I feel like I need to give this guy a chance. I was on the bandwagon of like bringing Jim Schwartz back as soon as you went through that process. And you went that deep with Jim Schwartz. It wasn't so much that you gave him an interview, it's that you gave him 2 interviews and he was like that close to getting the job. And you chose to go against him. Obviously, there was all the reporting about how he didn't seem very happy with that decision. I thought I thought that was the time to move. Like, that's it. You just got to move on from the guy. You're setting up Todd Monken to fail if you decide to hold Jim Schwartz hostage and bring him back. And this offense is going to be super young. We don't know who's going to be at quarterback. Whoever it is, it could be Shador Sanders, it could be some other young guy, whatever. There's a scenario where you get off to like a 1-3 start and the offense is not very good because it's young and the defense is playing great and you're losing games like you did last year. And you got Jim Schwartz in that room and all these defenders who wanted Jim Schwartz to be their head coach. And it's like, it just sows a little more discontent. So that's part of my thinking too, is I was of the thinking that as soon as Jim Schwartz didn't get that job, it was time to move on. And I think they waited too long anyway. They slowed the whole process down by trying to kind of hold him hostage and bring him back. But that's what I thought. You didn't agree with that though. Do you think they should have tried to keep? Well, I guess they did try to keep him, but you still would have liked to have kept him around after they hired Monken.
No, I don't. I think so.
Oh,
If I
okay.
said that wrong, I apologize. I think they should have hired him as the head coach.
Oh, okay. Well, see, we disagree on that too. But go ahead.
So I think they should have hired him as the head coach, if anything. And when Kevin got fired, I was going to be shocked if they didn't bring him back as the head coach. I will say this, and I say this as a respect to being an older coach myself. The last person that Todd Monken wants to bash or irritate is Schwartz. But the last person Schwartz wants to irritate or interfere with is Todd Monken. They know as older coaches how hard these jobs are to get. And I think that's part of the frustration. Now, I also say what I liked that everybody has pushed back hard on me is that I didn't mind the exit of Schwartz. Now, you would like people to be more professional, I always hear, or politically correct. I get all that. And you're right, that's the way to do it. But when you invest, this is an emotional game. And when you invest as much as these guys invest, he had a moment. And I've watched Jim Schwartz practice now for 3 years, and I've enjoyed watching all his practices. He's invested. So the idea that it bothered him and he went off like that didn't bother me at all. And people are like, well, he's got to be no, that just shows to me there's guys out there look at Jim Schwartz and go, hey, this guy's invested. And it was emotional and it was a moment, and we all have those, and that's what it was. But no, I think when he wasn't hired, that's when Jim Schwartz should have been let go. When you hired Todd Monken, you don't try to keep anybody else, because all the things you're saying are right, but they don't want to get in each other's way either. They understand how hard these jobs are. And, it's the bottom line is when you get passed over in coaching, it doesn't make anybody wrong. We like what you did. It's the bottom line. We like what you did, Jim, but we don't like you enough to hire you. That's a real thing. And when that happens, you move on. That's why you get hired to get fired in the NFL at all levels of football.
So going back to the new DC, we've talked about having to win guys over. Now, for the most part, I think we can overrate that a little bit. Most of these guys, this is their job. Guess what? They're going to show up to work when they have to show up to work, and they're going to do their jobs. A little different when you're talking about a guy like a Myles Garrett, who kind of transcends a lot of that stuff. He kind of gets to dictate some of his own terms. If you were advising, Rutenberg on this situation specifically, what would you think his message to Myles Garrett should be? If Myles Garrett, and I'm projecting, we don't know, Myles Garrett hasn't even said anything about it yet. But if Myles Garrett is a little bit like, yeah, I really liked Jim, I don't know about this, convince me.
Well, our job as coaches, regardless of what level you're at, your job as coaches is to build a relationship and get investment. That's how you win football games. Schemes are great, but you win with people. You know how I feel about that. Players over plays always. So part of players over plays is getting them invested. And when everybody says that Jim Schwartz is a players coach, he's not a players coach because the players like him. He's a players coach because he gets the most out of them. So if I'm Rutenberg, I'm going in and I'm going, listen, I'm not Jim Schwartz. I have a ton of respect for Jim Schwartz. This has nothing, the Jim Schwartz issue had nothing to do with me. I'm 44 years old. This is my first shot calling defense. I'm really good at what I do. Part of the reason you were really good at what you do is because Jim Schwartz created matchups for you. He found ways to get you one-on-one with tackles, inside on guards, stand you up, do different things. This defensive line is only going to be better. Mason Graham's going to be better. Hopefully we get McLeod Collins back. Alex Wright could move down inside if necessary. So we have tons of pieces inside. What if you get JOK back? Emerson's back. I'm going to sell that. I am not Jim Schwartz, but I am going to get the most out of you. And that's what a player's coach is, especially at that level. You don't care about what anything else is. You're not hanging out with these coaches. How does this guy maximize what I do? And for Myles Garrett, how do I get 25 sacks? And that's really what it comes down to. So I'm going to be upfront. They're grown men. I'm not Jim Schwartz. I'm me. And the scheme is going to be very similar. We're going to attack and you're going to lead it. And that's going to be it. And I'm going to leave it. And that's how it's got to be. I'm in charge, but I understand who you are as well.
So you mentioned a name there, and he came up on our pod on Monday, the Hey MK pod. Somebody asked about him, Martin Emerson. So I think this is a very interesting situation here because obviously he ruptures the Achilles. He's a free agent now. Back in the summer when it first happened, my thinking was, okay, he'll heal. They'll bring him back on a cheap deal. He'll play, see if he can get paid maybe a year later, right? Then they traded for Tyson Campbell. And I feel like that changes the math a little bit on Martin Emerson. Now, that doesn't mean that Martin's gone necessarily, that they won't bring him back, but it sort of changes the math a little bit on where he's going to play. So how would Martin fit in a cornerback room that would have basically, I mean, you've got two outside guys here. Do you trust Martin to play in the slot? Is he a depth piece? Where does he go in all of this?
Yeah, so here's what I would do with Martin Emerson. I'm going to say, listen, we need to figure out if you can run the same way you did. So you got to figure that out first. You got to figure out how stable it is. So if he could do everything he does and gets back to normal, I'm going to move him into the slot. And what I'm going to do is that if we're facing Ama St. Brown, I'm always going to help over top because I can trust my corners. So I'm going to tell him I'm going to play slot. But now you got a big dude in there playing slot. So you got Delpit down in the box and you got this guy down in the box if you're in nickel. So I'm going to say we're going to get big. We're going to be able to tackle. We're going to be able to stop the run. And Emerson will be able to cover any tight end, backs out. He can even cover the bigger slot receivers. And so many people in the NFL are going 12 personnel and put those tight ends in the slot. All right, well, you can do that with Martin Emerson. Now, if he gets caught on the outside, he's played it enough where he can play a little bit off, and you're not liable without him out there. If they go, they try to trick you and go tight end outside, move the receiver inside. So there's some things you can do with him. But because he's coming off that injury, you want to make sure that you protect him. Don't let him get run by. But he's a big physical guy. He always likes contact. So now you're going to say, listen, we're going to use your physicality down in the box, and we're going to have you cover tight ends. We're going to have you be a C, D gap, run fit sometimes. We're going to have you on the half sometimes if we need it. If we're going to go cover two or two shell, we'll put you back on the half if necessary. And then all of a sudden, Delpit becomes a nickel. And there's some different things you can do, but I'm going to move him into that down in the box, nickel, half guy if they're in cover two. Get him on, there's receivers, he can still cover those long, tall receivers that aren't 4 or 5 guys, things like that. There's a lot you can do with Martin Emerson. He's just got to be adaptable, knowing that uh, he's got 2 really good corners, but as you know, you need more than 2. And that, I think he could be the guy inside. And if you're not trusting it, if they put Amon St. Brown out there in the slot, then help him with safety help over top and make the 2 corners go man. So there's a lot you can do with him for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. He's almost like, I mean, you can almost use him like a chess piece, assuming Denzel and Tyson Campbell are both healthy in a given week. You could almost use him as a chess piece, because I know one of the things when they first drafted him that they liked was maybe that ability to put him on a tight end,
Hmm.
because of his length and his size. So, maybe he's not your full time slot corner. Maybe they look at the personnel and they say, okay, we're playing the Lions and Amon-Ra St. Brown is in the slot. Well, okay, we're not going to have Martin on the field in this particular grouping. But now, okay, they are in 12 personnel. Well, maybe we'll keep Martin on the field and maybe we'll take a safety off or something. There's different
Hmm.
things you can do. You can almost use him as a chess piece if you wanted to.
Well, think about this. Think about one of the hardest covers last year in the NFL was Harold Fanning Jr. A perfect body to try to cover him would be Martin Emerson. He's a big guy. He's physical. He's strong. He's got some size. He's got length. He can run. He can take Harold Fannin on in the run game. If you try to say, "Hey, you're going to be a nickel, we're gonna run right at you," he can take a guy like Harold Fannin on. He can cover a guy like George Kittle. There's some things he can really do that you could do. And if you think about this, all right, so maybe Denzel Ward. This is the year they travel. So you face Amon St. Brown. He's that part's over. Now we're playing with 10. I don't care where he lines up. Denzel, you got him. So now you do that and you say, okay, if he's the guy, then we make sure that uh, you know Tyson takes the other fast guy, and whoever the number 3 is, that's who Emerson got. So you're right. There's a lot of things you can do with a big physical guy who likes to play football and has had some success already at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up with that. That's one of the things that has always sort of bothered me. And it bothered this is one of the criticisms I would have of Jim Schwartz is I thought there were games when, and you don't have to do it every week, it can be matchup dependent, but I thought there were times when they could have traveled Denzel and they didn't. And so then you end up with Denzel on, like, he's not going against the receiver you want him to go against. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like,
well,
and
especially Dan when they would go like just when he would travel and the guy that we all thought maybe he should travel with doesn't play a lot of positions. He's just
right.
outside one. That I agree with you. Yes.
And the other thing is I think Denzel can play in the slot. Like,
Hmm.
obviously he's not going to be your slot corner, but if he is traveling with someone like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or one of these receivers who lines up all over the place, I think he can handle that. I don't think he has to just play on the boundary. So I do hope that's something, and we won't get a chance to talk to Mike Rutenberg until probably a couple weeks from now. But and, maybe that'll come up. Maybe we won't have time to get into all that, but at some point it will come up, and I hope that's something he'd consider. Is just this idea of, let's travel Denzel Ward a little more than Jim Schwartz did.
That's one of the things I look forward to this summer. And, I usually don't talk to those guys when you guys are doing your stuff, but I look forward to asking some of these football questions that I think these guys will be willing to answer in terms of like, that's a great question. If you travel Denzel, then all of a sudden that chess piece with Martin Emerson, that becomes important because now if you're saying we're going to play with 10, well, that 10th guy has to be flexible. He's got to be able to play run. He might be the nickel backer. He might be a guy who has C gap. He might be, there's a bunch of different things. You got to have some versatile guys. And I'll tell you what, there's 2 athletes out there when you go out to practice. Delpit and Emerson will be 2 guys that could do a lot of different stuff that could be really help a defensive coordinator when you want to make sure that the top receiver is covered. And I think Denzel is a top 3 corner. I'm sending him all to the top guys for sure.
Okay. Couple more things here, and then I'll let you go. I didn't prep you for this, so I'm curious what you're going to come up with. Who's the guy that benefits most from this hire, do you think?
What's
Or do you
that?
not have an answer yet? Who's the guy that benefits most from this hire?
Who's the guy that been? I'm gonna say from the defensive coordinator or Monken.
From the defensive coordinator.
Um, that's a great question.
I know.
I
See,
will.
I should
I
have prepped you for this, but it just popped in my head.
No, I will say this. I will give maybe not a direct answer, but I will. How about this? I will give you a better answer when I break down some more Atlanta film. But I'm gonna say whoever that rotating guy is. So let's just say it's Delpit. Even though Delpit have a great year, he's a puzzle piece that with this pre-snap to post-snap stuff and Delpit's ability to blitz, I'm going to say Grant Delpit even gets better because they can use him even in more places. But my second thing would be these second level guys like a Devin Bush and these guys being put in position to maximize their strengths. That's what I'm looking for. Do those guys get maximized? But if you said who's really pumped about this, I'd say all of them. But I'm going to say Grant Delpit's really excited because he'll be able to play all over the place in this defense.
Okay, so now we're a few weeks into, Todd Monken. I know you've had some time to study it a little bit. Kind of go, we've talked about, we talked about it after the hire, sort of who benefited most. But I guess here we are a few weeks into this hire. And we're going to do a draft pod on Thursday. Do you have a kind of a grasp of what Todd Monken is going to be looking for offensively? It could be in free agency. It could be the draft. Because we head into the offseason, the new league year starting here in a few weeks. What do you think Todd Monken's biggest priority is going to be? And maybe we take quarterback off the board. I think that's an obvious one. What do you think his biggest priority is going to be for this offense?
Well, knowing Todd Monken being old school, it starts inside out. So how do we address the offensive line? What veterans do we bring in, and what rookies do we go out and draft? So that's where it starts. I think he really believes when you watch the film on Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is a outstanding number 2 receiver because if you can get a true number 1 receiver that takes the rotations, that takes the number 2 receiver gets one-on-ones, right? He gets the second best corner. He gets rotations away from him. So now, do they have? I think he's going to say, "What do we have in Ced Tillman?" Now, if he believes in Ced Tillman, and he believes in Jerry Jeudy, then they go out and they get a guy like Mekhi Lemon, a guy who can get them easy yards if he's around. But if you take those linemen, there's a lot of receivers, and I love those sudden twitchy guys. So a guy like Zachariah Branch, there's a bunch of receivers that are top, early day 2 guys, late day 1 guys that will be around late day 2, even into day 3, like really good receivers. So it starts inside out. We got to get more physical up front. They're going to have to address that receiver position. I think he thinks the part of the problem with that receiver position for me would be they're just out of place, right? I think if you can move Jerry Jeudy down to number 2, Tillman becomes more of a spot guy on the outside, a red zone threat, a big receiver, the vertical threat. Then you go get a guy. And then obviously they got to address the tight end. If you're going to be in 12 personnel, if you look at what he did, the Baltimore had Andrews. They had Likely, who was turning into a star. But that guy that really helped him was that Patrick Ricard. He could do a lot and get you formation flexibility where he's almost like another tackle, but he can catch it out of the backfield like a fullback. So do they go out and get that guy, a guy like that, a big physical guy, maybe a Rouse kid out of Stanford who's, 6'5", 270 pounds, but could do a lot of different stuff. So there's some interesting stuff. But I would say if you said, what are they talking about right now? We got to fix this offensive line.
Well, yeah, and they might lose all 5 guys. I mean, Joel Bitonio is still making his decision. But other than that, they might, it depends, I guess, what you consider DeJuan Jones. He was a week 1 starter last year, but they might lose all 5 starters. And I don't know that they can go into next year saying, DeJuan Jones, you're going to be one of our tackles for certain. So as you were talking through guys, one of the guys that I think is very interesting, and I don't know if he's going to be anything or not, but there were flashes last year, is Isaiah Bond. I think he's very interesting with Todd Monken because of just because of how he was used at Texas. And you always talk about touch guys, and he's one of those touch guys. And he came in last year. He didn't come in until late. I think that's really hard for a rookie. I think being a rookie receiver is really hard anyway. And so with a full offseason and kind of an offensive coordinator who's really going to understand how to utilize him, I think he's a guy to kind of circle and, let's see what Todd Monken thinks of this guy.
Well, yeah, that's a great call, Dan, because same thing with like Ced Tillman. What does he think of Ced Tillman? Once again, you have Ced Tillman running, in a system. And this is not a crack against Kevin Stefanski because Kevin Stefanski does great things, but he's more of a plays over players. And that there's a lot of guys like that. But if you think about a system, right? So think about Ced Tillman, right? So we're going to use Ced Tillman on comebacks, on dig routes, on bang 8 posts, red zone. We're going to use Ced Tillman at what he does best with that big body. Right? Same thing with Isaiah Bond. let's get Isaiah Bond touches. Maybe he's the RPO guy. Maybe he's the guy runs the bubble screens. He's the guy who works the middle of the field. Like, instead of taking, again, when you're in a system, unfortunately, the goods and the bads get shown. When you're in a Monken offense or players over plays offense, they don't care about what you do poorly. They're not going to make you do that. So that's a great call because he's a guy with elite speed, and he's shown some ability when he's been out there. So that's a great call for sure.
And I think it matters. I mean, this is a guy that didn't show up until after the Philly practices, just to put that in perspective. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think of all the positions, there's a lot of positions that are hard when you're a rookie, and I think receiver is at the top of the list. It's really, I know there's some guys that make it look easy, but I think for a lot of receivers, all the stuff you have to learn and everything that goes into it can be really difficult. And if you don't show up until August, and they've done all the installs, and these quarterbacks have been working with these guys for months and months now, like that's a really hard ask for a guy. And and a guy who wasn't going to be a first round pick. This was going to be a guy who was probably a day 2 pick anyway. So like I just think a more normal offseason of being with the Cleveland Browns from January through August is going to help him.
Well, yeah, it's funny. So I always, when you go out to practice, the one thing I've told everybody when you go out to practice every day like we do, two things stand out more than anything else. It's the size, but the size combined with the speed. So you take a guy like Isaiah Bond, he's always been faster and better than everybody he plays. So the reason he didn't run a big route tree is because he never had to. He was just faster. He could just get off the line of scrimmage. All of a sudden you're in the NFL, and like you said, everybody's good. Everybody's fast. So now you don't know how to get the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter how fast you are, they're going to let you off the line of scrimmage. And you get off the line of scrimmage, they're going to close to your hip because these are pros. And so he's had to kind of, not only did he have to kind of come in late and learn offense, he had to kind of come in late and learn how to play receiver. And that's part of his issue when he was at Texas. Golden was an outstanding route runner. Isaiah Bond was a speed guy. And when you're a speed guy, it's kind of like Alex Wright when he came in from UAB. Alex Wright won with size. And he had all the tools, but he just ran around the edge and was bigger than everybody at UAB. All of a sudden, he gets to the NFL, and everybody is big, and he had to learn all this stuff, but he has the tools. Isaiah Bond has the tools, so that's really interesting, something I haven't thought about, but I agree with you. He could be really good in a Monken-style offense.
Okay, there we go. We covered a whole lot here on this podcast. So we're going to wrap this up there. Like I said, Lance is going to be back with us on Thursday. We're going to get you ready for the combine. We're going to give you some names to watch. Go through Lance's board. You always know Lance's board gets a little wild. So we were going to try to have Tim on, but Tim's on vacation this week, so we'll have to wait a little longer to do.
So you don't have this. You don't have
Lance.
the stable. Yeah, you don't have the stable person, the person who thinks normally and his brain is incorrectly. And Tim, you just have me. So you're stuck with my my thoughts on Thursday.
There's no balance. But that's okay.
No
sometimes just letting Lance cook is at least it makes for an entertaining pod. All right. So make sure you're following us like all of our socials. Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk. Twitter's Orange Brown Talk. We're on TikTok, by the way. Lance, are you on TikTok? I'm not really on TikTok. I just
I will now though. I was on there. I haven't done much with it, but now you guys are on there. We'll get that rolling too.
We're hitting all the socials, so look for Orange and Brown Talk on TikTok. There's actually 2 of them. I'm not going to get into why. I don't have access to one right now. So just follow the one where there's actual new videos getting posted. That's the one to follow. And also, look, if you're a Facebook person, got a Facebook page up and running, all that stuff. We're on all the socials. So just look for Orange and Brown Talk. And of course, our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Lance, I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Let's get it rolling.